I'm a 29-year-old guy, and up until last year, I never thought anything genuinely scary could happen to me. I always assumed horror stories were either exaggerated or straight-up fiction. At most, I figured the world had weird people in it, and if you kept your head down and minded your business, you'd be fine. That belief evaporated in a storage facility that sits about 10 minutes from where I live. To give some quick context, my stepdad moved out last year to take a job on the East Coast. He left a ton of tools and old woodworking gear that I couldn't store in my apartment, so I rented a medium-sized unit at this local storage facility in town. It wasn't a sketchy place. If anything, it was overly secure. You needed a personal code to get in the gate, a separate code to enter the building, and the hallways had cameras every 30 feet. Anyway, I signed a 6-month contract and didn't think twice about it. For the first few weeks, I only stopped by maybe once every 10 days. Nothing unusual to report. The halls had that nice industrial clean smell, and I rarely saw other tenants. If I did, they were either old dudes storing antiques or college kids stuffing furniture inside the smallest unit they could afford. Then somewhere during the 3rd month is when things started getting off. The first time I noticed anything weird, I almost didn't register it. I'd gotten off work a little early and swung by to grab my stepdad's sander. As I was walking down the hallway, I realized the unit across from mine, which I had never once seen open, was unlocked. The latch wasn't hanging in the usual resting position. It was sitting sideways, like someone had undone it halfway but never actually rolled the door up. I remember standing there for a second thinking, either the staff forgot to lock it, or whoever rented it left in a hurry. Curiosity got the better of me, so I tapped it lightly with my finger. The metal rattled but didn't open. I didn't try to force it. Frankly, it wasn't my business, and I moved on. When I opened my own unit, I realized I could hear something faint coming from behind that same door, or at least I thought I did. It sounded like whispering, but not in English. More like low static conversation from a television in another room. I stood there listening for maybe 10 seconds, until it abruptly stopped. No door movement, no footsteps, no car starting outside. Just silence. I brushed it off as someone watching something on their phone behind me, but when I slid my unit door shut and locked up, the opposite latch was closed again. Something about that detail made the hair on my arms stand up. I didn't wait around after that. 2 weeks passed with nothing new until I started noticing something that bothered me a lot more. Every time I visited, the staff on duty would ask if I still had the same unit number. It happened 3 times in a row. Once from the manager I'd seen a dozen times, twice from a younger employee who worked weekends. They weren't asking me to confirm my identity, they genuinely seemed confused about my unit assignment. Storage units don't get shuffled around like hotel rooms. There's no reason for them not to know. The 3rd time, when the manager asked, I laughed it off and said, "I've had the same unit since January, dude. You rented it to me." He looked down at his computer monitor for a long time and then said, "Right," in this flat tone. Then he handed me the keypad code slip and walked away. At this point, I was slightly paranoid, not terrified, just wary. Stuff escalated fast after that. One night around 8 p.m., I stopped by to drop off a box of winter coats. The building was almost always empty at night, except for cameras and the occasional forklift noise from the warehouse next door. That night, though, as I was entering my code for the hallway door, I could see movement on the indoor camera feed displayed on the wall monitor. It was someone standing in front of my unit. I mean, directly in front of it. No box, no dolly, no locker, no reason to be there. Just standing facing the metal door, utterly motionless. I could see their shoulders rise and fall as they breathed. No visible features because the camera angle cut off above the neck, like it was deliberately avoiding identifying them. I froze halfway through entering the code and waited for the person to move. They didn't. After maybe 10 seconds, the figure stepped out of frame to the left. I stood there thinking through my options. I had my phone, I had my car keys, and somewhere in my trunk there was a tire iron, but none of those were particularly useful if someone wanted to rob me inside a maze of hallways and steel roll-ups. I entered my code and pushed the door open as quietly as I could. The hallway was empty, absolutely empty. My unit was locked. The opposite unit was also locked. I didn't even open my door. I just left. I walked out, got in my car, and drove home. The next morning, I called the front desk to ask if they had employees doing a scheduled sweep at night. The woman on the phone said, "We don't do sweeps." Nobody was working last night after 6. I asked if I could review security footage. She said I needed a police report for that. Fair enough, I guess. I didn't file one because I didn't want to sound like a crazy person who got scared off by a silhouette and bad hallway lighting. I didn't go back for almost a month. Now here's where things went from creepy to outright disturbing. After putting off the visit for way too long, I finally made myself go in to grab some things. I got there mid-afternoon on a Saturday, which meant other tenants should have been around. Except the parking lot was empty and the building lights were dimmer than usual, like half the fluorescence had burned out. When I got to my row, my unit latch was wide open. The lock was missing. My heart basically dropped into my stomach. Everything that belonged to my stepdad, power tools, clamps, blades gone. Every estimate in my head put that at thousands of dollars gone in one go. I ran to the front desk, pissed off and ready to file a complaint. But there was no one at the front desk. No bell, no clipboard, no sign. Just a note taped to the monitor that read, "All access temporarily halted. Return Monday." I stood there staring at that sign for probably a full minute. The gate outside was open, the building doors were unlocked. And according to that note, nobody should have been inside. That realization hit late, and when it did, it was a cold punch of adrenaline. I walked backward to the lobby exit and didn't take my eyes off the hallway camera feeds until I was outside, at which point I practically sprinted to my car. I didn't wait until Monday. I called the police from home that evening. They sent an officer to take a statement and said they'd follow up with the facility about footage and insurance claims. 2 days later, I got a call from the officer. He asked me to verify my unit number. I repeated it 3 times. He put me on hold for a minute and then came back on the line and asked if I was sure I'd ever stored anything in that unit. That question completely blindsided me. I told him yes, obviously. I'd been renting it for half a year. He paused and then said there was nothing in the footage showing me opening that unit. Nothing. Not once. In 6 months. According to security, I'd been entering the building, walking down the hall, and then leaving minutes later with nothing in my hands. The officer said the footage did show me standing in front of a unit, but when staff was asked to confirm, they said my assigned unit wasn't the one I was standing at, it was the one across from it. The unit that always stayed locked. The unit with the latch half undone that first day. The unit where I heard whispering. The police pulled the rental records. The unit I believed was mine had no active contract. Nobody had rented it for over a year. The unit across from it, the one I never touched, was indeed assigned to me on paper. Everything I stored was gone. The rightful unit, the one on record, was empty. Facility claim denied. Police shrugged. It's been 10 months since all of this, and I still don't know what unnerves me the most. The fact I was apparently accessing the wrong unit for months. The person on the camera standing in front of my unit. The employees constantly checking what number I had, or the idea that someone else was listening the whole time from inside a perfectly locked space. What I do know is that I don't believe for a second that this was a clerical error or confusion over unit numbers. Someone was using the entire facility as a cover for something else, and I walked straight into the middle of it. The shadows are watching. Will you return for more? Like and subscribe if you want to hear the voices that whisper in the dark.